Hello, everyone. Welcome to TicTacTeq. Today is episode number 3. We're going to have guests that are coming in episode 4, 5, and 6. They've actually asked me to source some of their watches for them, and then we'll go through the experience of what it is to actually buy a watch by going through the authorized dealer first, being put on a wait list, and so on. And that's coming up. But today, I've received some feedback as well as a lot of questions from people that have either emailed me or texted me or went on Instagram and asked me a whole bunch of different questions. And I figured today would be a great day to answer the top 5 questions I get as a watch collector, or watch purveyor as I call it, or timepiece purveyor. And one of the questions I do get, it's not one of the top 5, but they say, what's the difference between a watch and a timepiece? Well, technically there isn't any difference. It's just how you call it. However, timepiece, the word, is typically used with watch collectors because a watch is typically more of a costume jewelry or something you wear on the run, whereas a timepiece typically has 3 main things involved in it. It has the material that they use to build the watch and the case, typically rare materials, gold, platinum, those types of things. Ceramic is becoming very popular. The movement of the watch is very specific, most of the time built by the watchmaker themselves, and how scarce they are in the market, meaning you can't just buy hundreds of them. They're pretty scarce. So that's what normally we call a timepiece, whereas a watch is just typically something you can buy anywhere. So that being said, let's get on to the question. So question number 1, and it's one of the most popular I get, is how do you know a timepiece is real and it's not fake? And that's actually a really good question. The answer is, by far, at any authorized dealer that you go to, that you see either in boutiques or in shopping centers, when you see the logo of a company in a jeweler, there's 2 types. There's authorized dealers, and then there's stores that are owned by the actual manufacturer, the watchmaker. Either or, you can guarantee 99.999% that any watch that you'd find there as new stock will be real. Now, what happens is there's a limited amount of pieces that go out every year. Every watchmaker has a set number of numbers that they'll produce, and what happens is once that watch leaves the retail market, it goes into what you call the secondary market. That really defines what the real price of a timepiece becomes. Most watches, the minute you leave the store, they go down in prices, or timepieces, I should say. There's a small percentage meaning less than 10%. It right now hovers around 7 to 8% of all the timepieces that are sold, and it doesn't matter if it's a Patek Philippe or an Omega, a Longines, Rolex, Audemars Piguet, it doesn't matter, Breguet, Blancpain. Most of those watches, when they leave the store, they'll still go down. They won't go down as much as your typical watch, but they'll still go down. There's about 8% of all of the watches that are in circulation, when they leave the store, they actually go up in value. That's what I do. I try to figure out which ones are the real ones. And typically what you see is those watches that go up in value when they leave the store, those are the ones that become in high demand. And it's typically the watches that are high demand that are cloned, or people produce fakes. And the best way to make sure that you're buying a real watch is make sure whoever you buy it from, it doesn't matter if you buy it from an authorized dealer or you buy it from the secondary market, you're literally buying not a watch, but the buyer. So ask questions like, if I buy this, will you buy it back? And if so, how much? And you should actually ask even authorized dealers saying, hey, if I come back here a week from now, will you buy it back? Most of the time, the authorized dealers will say, no, sorry, you'll have to figure out a way because we can't buy old inventory. So that's an answer. How do you know a watch is real and not fake? There's a saying, you literally buy the buyer, not the watch or the seller. And that would be a good way to do it. Question number 2 that I get very often is, how do I buy my watches? Well, quick answer, wherever I can get probably the best price for a watch that I think is going to either stay stable in price or increase in value, I'll buy it from whoever's selling it. I would say that the majority of my watches that I either keep for myself or that I've sourced for somebody else because they couldn't find it, I'd say it's probably 50-60% from authorized dealers that I have throughout North America, even in Europe, where I will call them and saying, hey, do you have this watch in inventory? And if they do, I'll buy it from them. I don't necessarily resell it. There's certain watches that I want to keep in my collections, and that's where I source them. But a lot of the times they don't have the inventory. It could be a watch that was produced 4 or 5 years ago and it's no longer in stock, and then I'll have to go hunt for it. And there's a lot of people like myself that collect. There's a lot of people that actually online that have huge multi-million-dollar businesses of just reselling watches. We'll contact them. The idea is you make sure that you find a reputable dealer, and when you find a reputable dealer, you make the transaction, and those transactions are typically long-term. So make sure you never buy a fake watch, but if you do, for some reason, you buy a watch that you're not happy with, make sure that the seller, doesn't matter if it's an authorized dealer or not, or a secondary market seller, that they'll buy it back. Question 2, how do I buy my watch? Just like everybody else, I go to stores, I look at people that are collecting rare pieces, try to get a connection with them, and if it works out, I buy it. Question 3, it's actually this is changing, but why don't authorized dealers buy back your watch or accept them as a trade-in? If you are into high-end cars or any type of cars, you've noticed that now it doesn't matter if it's a Ferrari or even Bugatti now. If you have their product and you want to bring it back, they'll buy it for you. They'll give you a trade-in value. For years, the top 3, top 4 watchmakers as far as value, Audemars Piguet, Patek Philippe, Rolex, they wouldn't buy it back. They say, no, we just deal with new watches. That's changing. That is changing a lot. COVID has changed a lot of things, and right now Rolex was one of the first ones to go out and actually have certified Rolex pre-owned, just like you would in any car. They rolled that out post-COVID. They tested it in different stores across the world. I believe from my information that I received from Rolex is they're going to phase that in, so more and more store can actually sell certified pre-owned and actually take it as a value, and then give them a credit for another buy. I'm not sure, but a lot of the beta program is they would only accept a trade-in if you were buying another piece. You wouldn't be able to go into the store and walk out with cash type of thing. That might have changed, but from what I know, I don't know if that's true or if this is ongoing. If you do, please comment below. After, of course, you subscribe and like. We want to get to 1,000 subscribers soon, and we'll have a good giveaway. We'll have a good watch giveaway at the 1,000 subscribers. And yeah, so the answer is it depends on the type of brand. Some authorized dealers are now buying back or actually receiving in as trade-ins for certified pre-owned watches. So I believe that's a great move for both the secondary market and the authorized dealers. All right, we have our top 3. Now we're moving on to top 4 and 5. Question number 4, how did I start collecting watches? 25 years ago, well, maybe 26 now. 26 years ago, I was at university. There was a movement at that time to resell jewelry and watches. I thought it was pretty interesting because I learned how big some of the margins were in both jewelries and watches, and I figured it would be a good way to kind of pay for university. So I looked at that. It was very interesting. I bought my first four-figure watch when I was 21 or 22, probably 21, and I started selling both jewelry and watches. And what really got to me is, I had bought this watch from, at a retail price, and I actually saw a real watchmaker, and he looked at my watch, like, hey, what kind of, nice, so on and so forth. And he's like, oh, and he said, how much did you pay for that watch? And I said, I think at that time it would have been in the mid 1990s. I said, $3,200. And he said, do you know how much that watch is worth right now? And I'm like, no. He's like, you're lucky if you can get $1,000. And I said, what? He says, yeah. He goes, son, there's certain types of watches that the minute you leave the store, they depreciate tremendously. That's one of those watches. But there's some of them, if you start doing more research, they'll either stay fairly close to what you bought them for, or some of them even appreciate in price. So that was the seed. Fast forward to now, I've been heavily collecting watches for the past 5 years now. Really 4 in depth, really 2 doing it, almost on a weekly basis, trying, buy information and seeing how the market is going. So that's how I started about 25 years ago, 26 years ago. Last most popular questions that I have. Why are the top watches so popular with the 40-year-olds? Well, I'm 47. I really don't know. And the popular watches that they're referring to is Audemars Piguet, Hublot, Omega, Rolex, Patek Philippe, and Breitlings, of course. I think there's a movement. If you look at who owns all of these different brands, there's a lot of independent watch makers out there, but the majority of the watches that you see either in stores or people wearing, for example, both, a lot of sports, golf, tennis, you can see a lot of the athletes being sponsored by, luxury brands that are out there. I think there's a marketing component of why they're popular. If you start looking at some of the watchmakers that are not so heavily focused on marketing, but really, really build great timepieces, the majority of the people don't really hear from them that much. It's a very specialized niche market. But I think the popularity of timepieces altogether is a function of people sometimes they have money and they want to buy something, and more and more people are really in tuned or want to get educated on what they should buy. So they, with the internet, especially YouTube now, that's readily available for everyone. You can do a lot of good research, and then the top brands will always pop up. But marketing is always a reason why certain things are popular. They go through cycles like everything else. But ideally, my recommendation to anyone that is thinking of buying a timepiece is call somebody like me or somebody that that is maybe a little bit more aware of what the market is like. Ask them a bunch of questions on what great watch you can get depending on the price. And really, from probably $1,500 all the way to $1 million, it's a really, really, really big spread. But you can get great watches in that spread. I mean, I have sourced watches for people. They're saying, hey, my son or my daughter is graduating. I went to the jewelry store. It was very expensive. I thought I could probably get something for a couple $1,000s. And they're asking 5, 6, 7,000, and then I'll show them saying, well, if you're buying this as a graduation gift, for example, here are some options that it really doesn't matter if you buy it at a retail store or you buy it from somebody that it's in perfect shape. The box is there, the papers are there, everything's there, it's certified. It makes just a great gift, but you can spend a quarter of the money on it. So I'd say, stick to the brands that watches they've been here for 300 years, almost 400. They'll be here for a lot longer. So yeah, so certain brands will be popular at times and will come down and they'll come back up and go down. But my recommendation is don't buy something necessarily for today. Buy for something that you think 5-10 years from now will be just as important as it is today. And typically your top watch brands will do that for you. So there you go. A very special episode for all the people interested in timepieces. We're not going to talk about tacos today. We're not going to talk about tequila today. This is all about watches. Most of my questions I've received so far, these were the 5 most popular ones, were all about watches. But the next episode, if you have any questions on tacos or tequila, bring them on. We'll try to do this every 4 or 5 episodes-ish in order to get some video from the comments you post below, as well as answers that you might be asking for. So again, have a great day, and don't forget, TicTacTeq. Don't forget to subscribe and like. Thank you.